with his disciples and them alone for some several days. And brothers and sisters, now he is out in the public eye again, and he comes into the city of Bethany, the village of Bethany. It can hardly be called a city even today, certainly much less back then. And he is seen of people as he walks the streets and as he comes towards Mary and Martha's home where Lazarus is found. They are in the home, and Martha is serving. You will remember that Martha has been upbraided before by Jesus for being overly concerned over her serving, overworking and missing the fact that the master is in the house, and being concerned about lesser things. But brothers and sisters, it is still a good point to remember that she had a heart of service as well. She was an individual who thought it not beneath her station in life, and she probably was a woman of some station. It was not beneath her station in life to be found serving others.
Amen.
And then Mary, we are told in verse 3, Mary, Martha's sister, Lazarus' sister, then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Now I want us to stop just there for a moment. This spikenard, brothers and sisters, is the oil that comes about it is a result of pressing and crushing the root of the nard plant, spikenard, nard for short. Nard is found in the higher regions of China, the Orient, along the Himalayan mountains even. And it is extremely costly. It's not cheap now.
Right.
But certainly in that day, you can still get it, by the way. It is a watered down version. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, for me to order the pure thing, what appears to have been at her disposal here. This was a perfume that was multi-purpose. It had medicinal purposes in that time. Certainly the well-heeled and the well-to-do would have used it for their own, perhaps personal, like ladies do perfume now. They would have used it very sparingly because it was very pungent. Mm-hmm. It was also used in the embalming process. Why would it have been needful and necessary to have had something that smelled so beautiful in the embalming process? Why, Brother Will?
To cover the stench of the decaying body.
To cover the stench of death. Exactly. And brothers and sisters, that kind of then gives you kind of an insight into what Jesus says whenever he says, let her alone. She has anointed my body for burial. She has prepared unwittingly. She doesn't necessarily know that in 6 days he is going to be crucified, but she has prepared by the ministry and the unction and the moving of the Holy Spirit. She has prepared my body for burial. This spikenard in Jesus' day, John records for us that in verse 5, that whenever Judas questions the wisdom and the prudence of Mary's having done this, Judas Iscariot makes the observation that this very vial of spikenard could have been sold for 300 pence. Brothers and sisters, let me try to just break that down to you how very costly this was. 300 pence, a pence and a denarii were pretty much the same unit of measure for money. A denarius was a day's wage.
300 days' wages.
Denarius is lacking
10 months.
4 days.
10 months' wages.
How many?
10 months.
Yeah, 10 months wages. 7 days a week wages. That's pretty costly in my book, isn't it yours? Can you imagine anything that you would plot down 10 months of your hard-earned money for and then break it? I don't know your individual circumstances financially. You don't necessarily know all of mine. But let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. 10 months of an individual's sweat, 10 months of their toil and tears and labor is not something that anyone takes lightly, is it? Brother Dick, you put in some hard work in your life, haven't you, brother? I know you have. I've heard about some of it. Can you imagine loving someone so much that you took 10 months of your sweat and you broke it at his feet?
Supreme sacrifice.
That's profound, isn't it?
To put it politely.
Mary took this pound of ointment, this spikenard oil, and she anointed the feet of Jesus. And not only did she anoint the feet of Jesus with probably one of the more costly single items that she had in her entire possession of all the things she owned in this world.
The costliest.
Then she took the crown of her beauty, her hair. She took the hair of her head, which would have had some length to it. And she, as she anointed his feet with this oil, she wiped the oil in with her hair. I've had individuals say to me, Christian individuals, say to me, whenever they discover that I'm Primitive Baptist, the first thing you can count on it, you can absolutely set your clock by it.
Yep.
The first thing they're going to zero in on is the fact that Primitive Baptists still practice the service of foot washing. And they will say to me, I could never do that.
You could never believe the Bible. You could never believe the Bible.
This woman didn't do it with her hands.
Nope.
How close have you got to get your nose to a person's smelly feet to wipe it with your hair? Pretty close. Pretty close. Pretty close. As a matter of fact, you could even say close enough to kiss them. She wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. And then along comes Judas and speaks up out of the crowd of onlookers. And he says, why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, not because he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief. And he had the bag and bear what was put therein. Brothers and sisters, Judas was the treasurer for the disciples.
Yes.
Judas was the one who kept the money purse. Judas was the one, see, everything they had in common. As Jesus and the disciples walked in his ministering years, they had all things in common, and what one of them had, they all had. And when one of them had excess, they all had excess. And when one of them was in lack, they were all in lack.
Yep.
Judas was the one that kept the bag, the treasurer's bag. It was probably more fitting to think of it as a small box of some sort. Judas's thoughts were of nothing more than how much more tinkling there could have been of the sound of coin in the box. if she had simply sold that ointment for what it was worth, or even half of what it was worth. Let somebody get a bargain and give us the 150 denarii. Look what we could have done with it. Well, Judas had no intention of doing anything honorable or noble with it. He could care less about helping anyone. It's thought by some that his intents were at this point, he already pretty well sees the way the ministry of this supposed Messiah is going. He's certainly not what the Jews had longed for and sought for, or what they thought they longed and sought for. He's been an utter disappointment to them in every respect. And it's thought by many that by this point in the game, Judas was making largesse on the money and building it up for himself a bank account so that he would have something to use to flee from the presence of Christ and the disciples. Of course, we all know that the history of his life took another turn. But that perhaps might have been some thought processes that he entertained. Then said Jesus, "Let her alone." Whenever you read in the King James, if that's what you're reading from this morning, if you're in the English Standard or Revised Standard Version, it might say, "For the purpose of the day of my burying hath she kept this." Let her alone against the day of